It really is a great time to be a Godzilla fan. We have a Japanese movie that's doing really well with Western audiences. We've got a trailer for the next North American entry in the Monsterverse. Gigabash is free on the Epic Game Store right now with Godzilla DLC available for purchase and Godzilla Minus One cosmetics on the way. We've got a boatload of merchandise. I sure hope that there's nothing that could take away from this sense of accomplishment. Look, friends, I don't want to get into the discussion of social justice or politics because I hate it. But if you're going to watch Minus One and your biggest takeaway is that it's an anti-woke movie, I think that that says something more about your mentality going into the film than it does about the film itself. Minus One is a triumph of Godzilla cinema in 2023, admittedly against relatively weak competition. It's a movie that has you feeling hope, dread, triumph, and angst all at once. And rather than get stuck on the wrong takeaways, I'd like to talk about the things that Godzilla Minus One does right, and what messages that all storytellers, not just filmmakers, can come away with. Before I get into that, I did want to let all of you know that I will be joining the Figure Mania show tomorrow night for their end-of-year live stream where we get to celebrate 2023 as Godzilla fans. I'll be joining a really stacked group of panelists, and I'm really excited to be there. I hope you'll be able to join us either live or get to watch it afterwards. Thank you to the Figure Mania show for the invitation, and I look forward to being there. Unless my pregnant wife goes into labor. Fingers crossed. From this point on, I will be discussing spoilers for Godzilla Minus One. The first thing that I would love to highlight is the intimate threat that Godzilla poses to our main characters. There's a quote from Joseph Stalin that reads, "One death is a tragedy, a million deaths is a statistic." We're used to seeing Godzilla and other monsters rampage across cities with the understanding that many people are dying, even if the film doesn't outright show us that. And when you get to this massive number of casualties, you sort of get desensitized to the danger and the threat that Godzilla poses to any individual character. And Minus One did a fantastic job of framing the threat that Godzilla poses to the main characters that we care about. When Koichi is on Odo Island, we see Godzilla rampaging around, he's killing the mechanics one by one, and you get a real sense of tension when he's hiding in the plane instead of firing the gun. It's a scene that drips with suspension, and it actually makes me feel reminiscent of the first T-Rex scene in Jurassic Park when the kids are hiding in the car. Then we have the boat chase scene, which I think is my favorite Godzilla scene ever. You have this crew of characters that you know well enough to care about them, and Godzilla really wants to take them out. Where the Odo Island scene was full of suspense, this scene is full of desperation. The first mine doesn't do any damage, the second mine gets disconnected from the trip, so the characters have to shoot it to detonate it, all the while Godzilla's getting closer and closer and closer. This movie did such a good job of conveying the threat that Godzilla poses. When he's a threat to your country or your city, sure, but when he's a threat to the characters specifically, it gives the audience something to care about. This is an area where I feel modern movies and television don't really excel in. They don't really do a good job of conveying danger or threats, because there's always a convenient way to write themselves out of it. There are too many stories out there these days that are so afraid to kill the characters that people care about that I think it compromises the gravity of the storytelling. That's part of the reason why I love shows like Attack on Titan or Supernatural. It's a shame that show never got more than 5 seasons. Those characters were immersed into very desperate situations where you understood the danger that they were in, and you understood that the only real way out of it might require sacrifice or giving up something. And to that end, I say, someone should have died in Minus One. I know you're gonna hate me for it, but I stand by that statement. To fully explore the threat that Godzilla poses to our characters, someone should have bit it. I think it should have been the rookie, and I know that you're going to hate me for saying that, but I think that that fully conveys and would have fully explored the threat that Godzilla poses to the main cast. And, you know, you could say, well, Noriko was almost dead, almost being the key word, but to really hammer it home, kill the rookie. Have him be on that ship that was just kind of abandoned during the final confrontation, have him be the one to sacrifice his life for the greater good of the mission. Should have committed to it. The second point that I want to highlight is the character arc that we get with our protagonist, Koichi. When we meet Koichi for the first time, we see him struggling with a decision and a choice that any one of us could struggle with. Coming to terms with the idea of dying for your country. I love the scene because it doesn't hit you over the head with exposition, but rather it trusts the audience to listen to the conversation between Koichi and Tachibana and make sense of what they're talking about. But also, it humanizes Koichi very, very quickly because it presents you with the decision that he is struggling with that any one of us would struggle with as well. We see this again very quickly when Godzilla is attacking the island and Koichi has to decide, do I use the weapon on the plane to try and kill Godzilla, or do I hide and try to maximize my chances of getting out of this alive? The consequences of his decisions we get to see weighing on him heavily throughout the film, where we see him struggling with nightmares, survivor's guilt, PTSD, and it all comes to a head when Noriko is pried from him and he is beaten down to his lowest point. It is from this lowest point where he finds the resolve to accept the duty that comes with being a kamikaze pilot, to find closure with Tachibana, and ultimately to take on Godzilla. Koichi's arc is so triumphant because we see this flawed character persevere and really rise to the occasion at the end of the film. And it's not something that the box office is really used to portraying, at least currently. For years, the box office has been dominated by superhero movies, and in the past couple of years, we've just been inundated with characters that are either, great to begin with, or don't really have an arc in the movies that they're starring in. We don't see much of that struggle, we don't get the sense that they're, similar to us average folks, and when you don't have someone to root for, there's gonna be a disconnect between the audience and the characters on screen. -1 had us rooting for characters that, at least for me, I have not done so ever in a Godzilla movie. Rando Yaguchi from Shin Godzilla? Not much of a character. Madison Russell from King of the Monsters? More of a plot device than a character, I would say. Future movies, kaiju or otherwise, could learn a lot from how characters are handled in this film. And if there is one message that I do not want people to take away from Godzilla -1's success, it's the idea that this movie needs a sequel. Sequelitis is a hell of a disease, and it very, very rarely is able to capture the lightning in a bottle twice. But who knows, maybe I'm wrong. Joker got a sequel, and that was another successful movie I didn't think needed a sequel. When it was announced that the sequel to Joker would be a musical, there was this very interesting reaction from the audience where the people like me who said it doesn't need a sequel, we were all suddenly very interested, but the people who were like, this movie needs a sequel, they were very upset. If Godzilla -2 does end up getting made, I can only hope it's because Yamazaki has a story worth telling, and it's not because Toho or, other shareholders are pressuring him to try and capture that success a second time. Those are my thoughts, but I'm curious to hear from you. What are your biggest issues with current movies or television shows? Let me know in the comment section down below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll talk to you again soon.